the iconic broadcast team, Hall of Famer Sam Rosen, Hall of Famer John Davidson, just officially introduced today as the Rangers president. I'm merely Bill Pito. You guys take it away. It's a real honor to be out here with you guys, and thanks so much
Bill.
for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
How are you, big boy?
This is a real. I know how you feel. Inside, this is really special, John, because, and I go back to when John was a player, and I covered the Rangers for UPI Audio Network, and go into the locker room, and the guys were a little wild and crazy guys, but what a life.
Yeah. It's,
everything that's come, starting as a player, John, and coming here when you were 20 years old.
Yeah.
And here you are back again.
I often think about you two growing up in Brooklyn, right? A Ranger fan, a lifer, and here you are doing what you do. I used to sit go up to the booth a little bit early, and I'd stare down at the ice, nobody in the building hardly, and just say, what am I doing here? I'm just a kid who grew up in Calgary who played hockey. Next thing you know, I was in St. Louis, and as I said, I had a good first year there. My second year, I was so good I got traded, and it was to the Rangers. And I came here, and I went, well, what have I gotten myself into? But once I figured it all out as a player, and how much passion there is here with sports and with the Rangers, it was phenomenal.
You had to play the game where Eddie Jockman came back as a Red Wing, and the fans are chanting, and I'm in the building, and they're chanting, Eddie, Eddie. I mean, that had to be as tough as it gets.
Well, I was thinking about that today. I was asked about it, and I look back at it. A couple of things happened. First of all, Eddie was picked up by Detroit. Of course, their first game is back in the Garden. And that was really nice because the fans had a chance to say, on behalf of the Rangers, goodbye to Eddie. And that place was nuts. There was banners all over the place. I'll never forget it. He stopped, it seemed like 100 shots that night. It might have been 50. And they won. I wasn't very good. I was a wreck. And after the game, their locker room was divided by the hallway there. And he ran into me and wished me well. And talked a bit about the whole experience. That was as classy as it gets. And then I'm thinking later that was a good night. For me, a lot of people say, how'd you do that? That had to be. No, it wasn't. You learned how Ranger fans treat people they love. It was special. And it turned out to be, when you look back at it, just a great memory. Great, great memory.
And then 79, when you played through the injuries, came back from the injuries, I think that's when the fans really just said, we love you, John. You took that team on your back to the final.
That was fun. I didn't know how it was going to start. I was coming off the shoulder injury and got lucky early in the game against Los Angeles, game one. Then we went out there and won it. And then we beat Philadelphia. Then, of course, there was the Islanders. And the Islanders were just a great team just starting, with Denny Potvin and my buddy, Bobby Nystrom, who I played junior hockey with in Calgary. And, greatness of Trottier and Bossy and Denny Potvin, all those guys, Billy Smith. And it was phenomenal. And it was a great series. We won. The last game winning it at home, game 6, and to see the reaction by the fans, that was special. And then Montreal, and I'm sorry to say, I think about this probably even many, many years later like this, at least once a week. Whenever I run into Serge Savard, who played for Montreal, he rubs it in all the time. He just, the first thing out of his mouth, rub it in. Oh. But we won the first game, we were up in the second game, and we lost the series. And I'd love to have that chance over again as a player. Love to.
Well, now you'll have it as an executive somewhere down the line. The years you came back, here's the thing, he's coming back now, but he's come back before. You went off and learned the broadcast business in Canada, came back, and then we hooked up in 1986.
Well, to be invited back is pretty special. I can say that. And I've always said that the network here gave me life after hockey as a player. And thank God for that, because I don't know what I would have gone and done something, but I was a lifer in this game, and this is what I've always wanted to do, is to stay in the game. I was only 29 when I retired. Sam, I remember that I was asked to do an interview with Bill Torrey down by the locker room in the hallway. It's my very first interview ever. And I got the great Bill Torrey sitting here, and I went like this. I almost had to grab it with my hand. I was so nervous. And I swear it didn't happen, but I think I chipped his teeth with the mic. It was just like this. And he was so gracious to do that and get me through it. And then we laughed a little bit on it later, and we got to know each other real well down the road in a lot of different areas.
Yeah, but when you
it was
came
great.
back from Canada, you were a polished broadcaster.
Yeah, I worked a lot up there.
When they said, when Phil, who I worked with for 2 years, stepped up and became general manager, and they were deciding on who they were going to get, there was only one choice, because you, by that time, were the #1 broadcaster in hockey.
What I had done was, first of all, when you're new at this, you have to have coaching, and people helped. Pete Silverman helped me here. Phil always helped me, but John Shannon, Phil Harmon, John Shannon up in Canada.
Oh, yeah.
And I went back to Calgary, and I did all the Flame games, and then I did the Oiler games too up in Edmonton. It's a 3-hour drive back and forth. And then I did Hockey Night in Canada on Saturdays. So there was a lot of work. It was traveling all over the place with these teams. But you had to go through the experience. If you don't go through the experience, you don't get there. And then you have to have honest talks with your coaches or your directors and your producers, and they really helped me. And that was awesome. And I did the math. When Phil decided to step up and be general manager, and then I was going to come back here covering the Rangers and with the Islanders over there and Devils over there and Philadelphia down there, Boston not far. I was home over the 8-month period of the season, over 2 months more in my own bed at night. So I'm going, I'm going back to New York. It's great, and it was a good decision.
And here you are back again.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
For being here. Sam, thanks so much for stopping by. We would be remiss, John and Sam, if we didn't give you our parting gift. Oh, baby. MSG Network presents the Stanley Cup season of the 93-94 New York Rangers on VHS.
I was just going to say.
You guys are big time, and you get to leave the MSG 150 with a VHS.
I was going to thank you. I was going to say I still have one of those machines.
Bill, along with Alan, now let's bring in the coach at the University of Pittsburgh, Jeff Capel. Jeff, when he was at the university, when he was at Duke University, helped recruit RJ Barrett. Coach, thanks so much for your time. Your impressions of RJ Barrett during the recruiting process, and how do you think things are going to evolve for him now as he goes to the NBA?
Well, I think he's going to be a great pro. I think he's been trained from an early age to be a pro. His family, amazing family. His dad has done an amazing job of teaching RJ the game, teaching him how to work, to conduct and act like a pro. I think his game is tailor-made for the NBA game. It's more open. I think you'll see a little bit more of his creativity, his ability to impact the game in multiple ways. The other thing is that I think the kid is he's a winner and he's a competitor. That was the thing as we went through the recruiting process of looking at RJ and recruiting him and then getting to know him. He's one of those guys that's wired differently. He has this competitive streak that you just can't teach. And the thing that I loved about him and love about him is that he's always won. He's used to winning, and he has impact on winning, whether it was at Montverde, representing Canada, in international competition, and then what he was able to do at Duke this year. If you look at his numbers at Duke, I know that everyone talks about Zion, as they should, but he had numbers that no one has really done in the ACC, and he did it as a freshman. And he did it at times, kept them afloat when Zion was out and missed games. So he's a great kid, an amazing, amazing competitor, a relentless worker, and I think he's going to continue to get better and better.
And yet you bring up Zion, and I think, do you wonder, I'll ask you instead of what I think, is if he wasn't teammates with Zion, would we be looking at him differently because of the comparison? They're on the same court every game. Zion jumps off the page athletically, and so RJ, we almost are looking at him unfairly because of the comparison, because they're side by side every night.
Yeah, I think they're both great players. And certainly I don't think whoever drafts either one of them I don't think they can go wrong, and I think each franchise will be incredibly happy. I think it's a testament to RJ that he was able to maintain a level of consistency and being consistently really, really good when all the attention was not on him. I think it's a great example of continuing to go out and to play your game and to be really good, to be really elite, and to stuff a stat sheet with a guy like that. You know, some guys, you know, would have become jealous, especially because RJ's used to being the absolute best player. Like, it's not like he's a kid from the United States and you play on some of these U.S. teams, and there may be a guy like Zion or like some of these other guys that you can make an argument, well, this guy's the best player. You know, in Canada, on the teams that he was on in Canada, there was no argument. He was the best player. At Montverde, he was the best player. Now, when he was younger, he had to work his way up to that. But by the time he was, I mean, heck, he was a junior last year, you know, in high school, he was still the best player. And so I think it's a testament to him that he was able to go in and to adapt. I think it shows that he can play and be really good with other great players like he had with Zion.
With Alan Hahn and Monica McNutt. We're now joined by Giants offensive lineman Will Hernandez. My hand cannot go over the forearm. Thanks so much for dropping by. Last year, you were a second-round pick, and you start every single game. How'd you do that?
You know, well, I came in, you know, obviously as a second-round pick, and to me, I've always expected a lot out of myself. I said, you know what, the Giants picked up in the second round. They're expecting a lot out of you. You're expecting a lot out of yourself. You know, I ended up playing the entire season, every snap. And to me, honestly, that wasn't anything special. A lot of people were commenting on it and saying, oh, wow, Will Hernandez played 100% of the snaps and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, you know what, like, that's just my job. You know, I was just doing my job. The Giants didn't bring me here to play, you know, 25, 50% of the snaps. So in my eyes, I was just, you know, simply doing my job and, you know, doing what I was brought here to do. And yeah.
And watching, you know, preparing for your draft last year, like I remember David Gettleman, what he loved most about you, especially on film, was how much you competed. Even though UTEP, your team, wasn't a very competitive team that year, you were in games that were blowouts, and still, fourth quarter, you're giving it all you have, all the way to the end, to zeros, and that's what he loved, and he wants more players like that. But for you, like you said, that seems like that's just who you've been almost your whole life. You're literally a self-made man in this sport, and where you are today compared to where you were a couple of years ago.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, that's just who I am by nature. I'm a competitor. I take football very seriously. I have fun with it, don't get me wrong, but I just feel like when you step onto that field, you're not stepping on to mess around or to play hard here or there or just take a break. It's all out. It's all out. It's a violent sport, and I take it, you know, I treat it as such, and I believe that's just how everybody should play when you put the helmet on.
Such a business-like approach, Will, but what was the toughest part of bringing that to the next level? You look at it as, this is my job, I'm here to play 100% of the snaps, but it wasn't that simple coming from Conference USA to the league. What was the toughest part?
No, yes, of course. I mean, obviously there was a lot of hurdles and there was a lot of challenges that, you know, I had to overcome coming into this brand new league, you know, from Conference USA, you know, and it was a big jump. One of the biggest jumps, I would say, was the speed part of it. You know, everybody's fast, everybody's strong here. You know, the best guy that I played against in college, I pretty much saw him every single week here in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And so it was like, you know, in college, you could have maybe gotten away with a bad step here or a bad hand there or bad technique there, and we're able to recover. But in this league, you know, you get out of position for even half a second and it's done. So that was probably the biggest adjustment that I had to make, was being in the right position as much as I could. And yeah, just not getting beat like that.
Now, Alan mentioned some of the struggles. Take us back to your high school years in Las Vegas. Family has a little bit of a rough patch, and you have to actually live in a relative's storage shed. What was that like, and how'd you get through that?
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, my family was, as I was in high school, was struggling financially, and you know, it was around the same time where the recession hit in 08, and so yeah, it hit us pretty hard, and at the time I was just starting to really get involved with football. And in my case, I was just thinking about, it was getting so bad at home. I was like, football at the time wasn't giving me any sort of income or any way for me to help my family. And, at the time, that's probably shouldn't have been on my mind. My mind should have been on school, but I wanted to help my family out. So I thought about, maybe leaving the game for a little while, getting a job, helping my parents out. And, thankfully it was for these two coaches, Coach Froman and Coach Jack, that were there at the time. They talked me back into staying with football. They showed me the bigger picture. They helped me think a little bit ahead and for the future. They said at the time I had no information about the way the process worked of a scholarship, and from a scholarship playing in college, and then from college going into the NFL. So I completely didn't know anything about that.
So for you, it was you never even thought like, well, if I'm good at football, maybe it can take me to the NFL and I can get my family out of this situation. That never crossed your mind back then?
Yeah, no, I didn't know any of that. So coaches opened my eyes and helped me see the future, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna stick with football, and then I'm just gonna go for it. I'm gonna give it all I got because I love the game that much too. I said, you know what? I'm gonna keep doing what I love. I'm gonna go for it, and then I'm gonna see how far I can get it, and hopefully it can help me and my family out in the future.
What's happening in baseball right now is incredible. If you think about the fact that you see other sports, the NFL's allowing end zone dances now, and that's gotten crazy. In the NBA, you celebrate just about everything. Some guys celebrate before the three even goes in the NBA. Baseball is still kind of, the NHL even, which is a lot of humble players, raising sticks and celebrating goals. In baseball, it's like put your head down, just run the bases, and then don't get anybody upset. What is going on in this?
Alan, here's the thing. You're right, there are people who still believe that. But there's much more done now and much more allowed now, much more accepted now than there's ever been. And even from the top, and I would hate to see baseball ever go where the NFL does and put celebrations in the actual rule book of what you can do, when you can flip your bat. That's ridiculous. No, you can do what your team and the other players feel is okay. And that changes over time, and it's already changed. The things Javier Baez does now, the things Odubel Herrera of the Phillies, the things you see every day with the Yankees and Mets, 20 years ago, there would have been a lot more trouble. It has changed. It is changing along with society. But anytime you have change, there will be some people who will pull back and fight back on it. But right from the top, you see the let the kids play promos from MLB, from the commissioner's office last fall and then again this spring. There's an understanding that this is where baseball needs to go to attract that next generation of fans because people want that.
Is that the premise of the book here, Unwritten Rules, that they have to maybe lessen some of the traditions?
Absolutely, and that they already are, and that the players you see and the celebration of players you see. I wrote last year for Bleacher Report about Javier Baez, who at the Little League World Series last year when they surveyed all the kids, he was the #1 most popular player among all the major leaguers. It helped there was a team from Puerto Rico there, but he's really popular among American kids from around here too, and because of the way he plays. And when I went to do that story, I talked to Chris Bryant, and Chris Bryant notoriously, just like Aaron Judge, never flips his bat, never sits and admires his home runs. But Chris Bryant said, I love what Javier Baez does because for him it's genuine. He said, I couldn't do what he does because it's not my personality, just like he couldn't do what I do. It's not his personality to tone that down all the way. It has to be done within the structure of the game. It's 162 games. You can't be like the NFL. It's not once a week. However, you can have fun, and you can be seen to be having fun.
The Judge did walk by the Red Sox clubhouse playing New York, New York, though. So there's still a little bit of that in him, but not on the field. This conversation seems like it really grew into more of a national discussion about baseball after Jose Bautista flipped his bat. A famous, obviously, scene that ended up turning into something real ugly after the fact. There it is. And that is one of those sports moments of aggression, of celebration, whatever. And then here's Odor letting him have it a year later. But it really became a discussion after that, because it felt like that was an emotional moment, an emotional reaction. And why should he be punished? Why should he have to face that type of fun police retribution? Mainly because he did something spectacular in a playoff game.
I agree with you, Alan. I write about this in the book, and I talked to Jose Bautista when he was with the Mets last year. I talked about it, and there were two levels of pushback on what he did. And I don't really agree with either of them, but this is what you heard when you heard people justifying, and even players around the game, some of the older players, justifying what the Rangers did in retaliation. What you heard is, A, it was premeditated. I can't buy that.
Is he that good?
How do you, that you know
Hey,
you're
I'm
going
gonna
to
put when I hit a home run,
to win a playoff game. I mean, nobody can argue that it wasn't a situation that called for celebration. A huge home run in a huge playoff game. That it had plenty of things going on before. The other one you heard was that he turned towards the Rangers dugout as he flipped the bat. I've watched that tape I don't know how many times. I don't see that. But when people talk about what's acceptable in bat flips, one of the things they talk about is make it about your team, not about your opponent.
He's supposed to throw it across the field.
Well, no, it's a matter, and actually this year there was a big stink about Tim Anderson of the White Sox.
Yeah.
And one of Tim Anderson's defenses, and I thought it was a very legit defense, and you see Tim Anderson very dramatically threw his bat towards the White Sox dugout and turned to the White Sox dugout. Like, I'm not shoving it in your face. Yeah. I'm celebrating what I did and that trying to get my team fired up about it. Now, I understand, and I think you can relate to in basketball, if you, or football too, if you beat someone on the field and then you turn around and put it in their face, you're going to have a lot of trouble.
For more great videos from the MSG 150, check out right there. And remember, our show is on Monday through Thursday, 8 to 10:30 p.m. on MSG Network and MSG Go.